and we are opening the Wednesday, November 27th, 2024 Personnel Advisory Committee meeting. First order of business is reviewing the job description for the executive assistant in the police department.
Yeah. Okay.
So just to give a little background, the police chief has been looking to revamp this job description and revise it for a little bit of time here. It has taken on two of the main changes have been procurement, and I'll let Gary speak to that a little bit as well as he met with the chief. And the other piece of it is a records access officer, which handles a lot of sensitive materials, has a lot more independent judgment. And with that, I will let Gary speak to what he spoke to.
What is a records for a records what?
Records access officer. And so what she is handling currently is any time that anyone, it could be a resident, it could be outside of the town, makes a public records request, she is responsible for paying attention to what needs to be redacted per law, what doesn't have to be redacted.
Do we have people in various departments who perform that function?
It's really specific, I think, to.
It's become more.
So it only applies to the police. The records,
department.
the ability to ask for records only occurs in the police department.
It's townwide.
Yeah.
Every department can be asked for a public record.
Right.
The material she is dealing with is different.
Yeah.
I would. I'm going to want to debate that, but
Okay.
we can make. I would want to I don't know that serves the town well, distinguishing between the type of information that one would have to disseminate. I worry about all of this very specific detail about this particular job, 5-page job description. So anyways, I'll hold my, and I didn't read about that in this job description. Is it in there? This records role?
Yeah, it's in there, but
All right.
The employee has access to that. It kind of affects confidentiality more than anything, right? The employee has access to all townwide info on individuals.
Yes, and does not the executive assistant in the fire department have similar exposure?
Yes.
And does the town administrator have an executive assistant?
Yes.
And would that executive assistant have similar exposure to townwide sensitive information?
I don't know. I when we're talking about criminal backgrounds, that type, I'm not sure about what.
We got people over in the department who have access to if I'm a volunteer and that I have to give my tax returns and stuff.
Yes, the TRED department.
Yeah, we have this kind of access to confidential information in numerous places, is my view. And it strikes me that there has been an effort here to go to great lengths to not only describe, but perhaps exaggerate the unique duties and responsibilities of this job is my worry. And it strikes me that we're getting into bidding wars over whose executive assistant is more valuable and important. That's why I ask about whether it would behoove the town at some point to consider a generic executive assistant that would be similar across all of functions, reporting to a department head. And that, so anyways, I'll be quiet.
Keep going, Kevin, because you're hitting the nail right on the head. Okay.
That's a question I have, Bill. Has the town ever reviewed having just a generic executive assistant? Because what's happened is the DPW business administrator is a higher grade. Then you've got the executive assistant in the TA's office. Then you've got these two in public safety on a different grade.
Yeah.
So have they ever reviewed that in the past, Bill?
I mean, this is what's carrying some of this, if you just take away that part of it, it's the business manager part. That's why I dug into that, because I was curious what makes this position different than the town administrator, executive assistant.
So do we have business managers elsewhere in the town?
And that's the only one I could find was at
Just
Light and Water.
DPW and just
Or
DPW and
DPW.
Light and Water.
Yeah,
And is that exempt role or a non-exempt role? And
Non-exempt.
non-exempt. Yeah,
the business manager and Light and Water is a non-exempt role?
Yep.
Okay. By the way, a bachelor's degree would be a big indicator of an exempt professional role. It would be a big indicator. It suggests that there's professional training required for the job, which is one of the tests for an exempt role.
yeah.
So-
That's something I think, Kevin. As these positions have changed over the years, the exemptions really haven't. So when I looked at this position, boy, it was reading different than the exemption all over it. But I guess that's a different discussion on how we want to relook at these. I know
I wonder if that
there's union
becomes part of
involvement.
I wonder if that becomes part of the comp study.
Yeah.
Because if they're reviewing the job descriptions anyway, do we look at it at the same time?
If we're going to grade this job, we need to know whether it is an exempt or a non-exempt role, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, correct. Right at this time, I'm talking in general for all the other roles.
Sure.
And-
Making sure that jobs are classified appropriately as exempt
Yeah.
or non-exempt is a critical issue. It's a deal.
Yeah.
It's a big issue with the DOL these days.
Sure is.
And with the theme being, don't be going classifying. It's the safest thing to do is classify a job as non-exempt because it means it's overtime eligible, but it's hourly paid in that event. The dangerous thing is people classifying jobs as exempt, so with the ulterior motive of making them ineligible for overtime pay. But we should get this job as written. If it stays as written, it asks for a bachelor's degree and 5 years experience.
Yeah.
This is not an executive assistant, in my opinion, this job as written. So it strikes me that there's a variety of ways. Either this isn't, and yeah. By the way, non-exempt jobs do not supervise people. It's another supervision of others. This job says it will give some quasi-supervision to others.
Yeah.
Exempt job description should say none, period. N-O-N-E, period, under supervision exercised.
Yeah, I think what muddies the waters of that is our senior tax work-off program. Because you find a lot of these.
So somebody else ought to.
I know. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing of it is, under supervision, if you look at the FLSA, to be a supervisor, you have the ability and responsibility to hire, fire, and discipline or make an effective recommendation thereof. There's a big difference between supervision and direction.
Yeah.
The non-exempt can direct, but they cannot supervise.
Right.
And that's along with what Kevin was saying.
I agree.
I don't believe
a two in that area anyway. I mean, So it's not like I didn't give it a heavy. It doesn't have immediate direction, but it did have technical direction on monitoring other, like what I just mentioned, the senior tax work-offs and other. In dispatch, we get into dispatch and other things in there that made this position a little bit different, which obviously isn't going to give it some immediate direction, but explanation of guidance, some other things like that, where we're definitely, that's why I put that at second degree when it came to supervision given. So it's a little bit more than an office clerk that absolutely has none.
Yeah, but
I think we got to look at the job evaluation guide and review the description of that factor. And supervision given, page 16.
I mean, I'm looking at the degrees on the degree sheet. That's how I'm.
May provide functional or technical direction monitoring. Yeah, so I think, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I may have interrupted some flow of thought.
No, I mean, we always, every time we start doing these, we start talking about the bigger picture where we need to start standardizing. And I'm hoping that this study that we're doing right now, is it who we have doing? Is it the Collins Center doing this? No, this is, who's doing our comp study?
Michelle, you're on mute.
Sorry, say that again, Gary.
Who's doing our HR study that we have?
So we haven't typically chosen a vendor yet,
Oh, okay.
but we are working with the Collins Center
That's what I
to
thought.
get a scope of work right now.
Okay, so that's just definitely a standardization of like Kevin and Bill and myself. We've all said would help greatly, I think, with these, and then it'd be a much easier job going forward on how these things get graded. And if we have outliers,
Yeah. More importantly than even making it easier would be internal equity across functional areas as to common jobs. And we don't, you write a very general job description that the executive assistant will assist the department head and other members of the department and all things blah, 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 blah. And you don't get into the gory details of blah, 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 blah. You specify a general level of complexity and duties and support. And you have one job description and one grade for all similarly situated jobs that report to a department head. And it avoids differential grading, perceptions of inequity, and it contributes toward the perception of equity, in my opinion. And it prevents grade shopping, which feels like is going on here with a 5-page job description.
Well, I'm
And
going to
the
be
other
very
thing is, then in the job description, you write the norm. You don't write the tails of the bell curve, the things that happen once a year. You write the things that happen between the two standard deviations from the mean, not the things out in the tail of the bell curve. This job description seems chock full of things that might happen and stuff, and that's not what you do with job descriptions, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm going to throw the monkey wrench into it. When I looked at this description, I'm saying, it looks like they're just trying to build something to add to it so they can get a higher grade. The reference in there that, hey, it's currently a grade 10 and they would like it to be a grade 12. I'm saying, no, I don't think that's in there. It doesn't require a baccalaureate degree. It didn't before, and I don't think it should be now. I think 2 years of college are the equivalent, and up to 5 years. Again, it's a stretch. And I looked at it and I said, no, as far as I'm concerned, looking at the past evaluation, it doesn't change. So I said, hey, it's a 10, period.
What grade is the assistant to the town administrator?
11.
So in anybody's world, would we conceive of this job being a higher grade than the
No.
executive assistant to the town administrator?
No, because this executive assistant town administrator has basically access to just about anything that the town administrator has. Within reason, of course.
Yeah, the only thing I can say is I'm trying to look at this from the outside where police and fire are different. They're strong departments. We are trying to equate all these positions, and it works maybe in town hall, but I don't know how. Does the town administrator assistant procure? No, at all. So when we start getting into those, some of those things carry some weight behind classification. So I don't know. And when we're dealing with prisoners, and this individual being used as a matron, things like that are very unique. So I don't know how do you capture that? I mean,
Could we be having this person serving as a matron? Is this person got the background to serve as a matron and the training to serve as a matron?
Yeah, that's the thing. The training had to come with it because you do have to be trained to be a matron. And, it's the fact of the matter is there's very few females in the workforce. So we end up using any female we have at the police station to be matrons. They all get trained in it, but yeah, I don't want to. I'm just trying to. I struggle. Obviously, a 2-grade jump is crazy when you look at it. So that's why I went down there and I wanted to say, okay, what makes this different? So I was able to see the difference. It's not whether it goes to a grade 12 or not. That's up for discussion, but I see it as being very different as the other grade 10 admin type positions. I do.
Do you think, Gary, that the fire chief would agree with that distinguishing characteristic of this job?
I actually spoke with him this morning and he said that fire is different. They have the same records access stuff that they're handling. If anything, they're front facing to the public. This position is in the police department is not, because that of the location of the desk, they are not at the front counter with serving the public coming in as the fire is. So if somebody comes in looking for fire prevention, that executive assistant is right there. They're the one that has to disseminate that information. If someone comes in and they have a heart attack on the floor, they're the one that has to initially assess that and take care of it and get the staff. They're seeing everything. It's just, they're seeing different things. And that's why, to Gary's point, it is very unique. For the records access piece, the fire department he said they don't redact anything because it's a medical report. So if somebody's asking for that, they can't redact anything. They need that full report. Whereas in the police department, there's a lot of stuff that they may need to redact per criminal investigation or stuff that they shouldn't be seeing. If, like, you as a resident had asked, okay, I need this.
And the executive assistant is going to make that determination as to what gets redacted?
I did ask him that and he said yes.
Whoa.
And that is, so when Amy and I went through the grading, it wasn't the confidentiality category that changed. It was the independent judgment and initiative and accountability that changed. Yeah. Because if she's mainly responsible for that, because I asked the chief, are you then checking it after she redacts before it's submitted? And he said, no, she is responsible for redacting, figuring out what needs to be redacted, sent, and she sends it.
So she, when you look at this position, we're saying she, but I guess it could be anyone in the position, but the special requirements part of this are also what make it unique from your your executive assistant at town hall doesn't have, first responder trained CPR certification, CJIS certification, 911 certification, notary public records law certification.
And should this person have does this person need all those things, or are we jamming all those?
The fire department does.
I'm just reading it as it's.
I'm reading it as. That's the question is: should the job be constructed this way? What is 911 certification, and does this position need to be 911 certified?
No, because it's not a dispatcher.
We're just building a situation where we're going to ratchet. We're going to up this job a grade or two, and then the fire chief's going to be in here coming in with a 5-page job description, asking that his job be upgraded similarly because his executive assistant is claiming, unfair pay. And then the town administrator is going to say, do you know that my executive assistant interacts with the governor's office?
Yeah, I know how these things can get out of control, and I
That's why I go back to go ahead, Gary. Sorry.
No, I want to make sure that when we expanded our grid from 15 to 24 grades, we didn't. So that's why we're kind of going through some of this process. is this a result of that change where maybe is this ahead of the curve where yes, maybe all of these executive assistants are all going to be grade 12s? That's what I mean, I'm kind of trying to look at it as a big picture that way as opposed to this maybe unique position. Now, although I do say just from research, it does have things that a typical executive assistant, and that's why I think the business manager part of it is on here. But
well, maybe it should be a business. Maybe we should be calling it a business manager, and asking, is there an approved position for a business? Because that's what's going on here. Is a job other than an executive assistant is being presented here for grading, in my opinion.
I think we're up against history though of what it's always been. So, has this position migrated? In my opinion, yes, it does all their payroll still, of course. Who
does payroll in the fire department?
Same thing.
Executive.
Yep.
Okay.
It does all their procurement. I'm not sure if fire does procurement. What makes it a little bit more unique, it does manage over 2 unions in that department as well, which makes it a little different than.
That's not the job of this position. That's the police chief's job.
It did mention it in here though.
Yeah, but the
Are you
administrators.
Are you talking about the payroll, Gary?
Well, the payroll for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I hate to speak to the other 2 positions that we're trying to compare it to because it didn't work for me either. So unless we really look at these and say they all need to be 11s or 12s.
That would be my recommendation.
The business manager piece of it. That's why when I saw this, I go, well, let me find another business manager. And that's what I did to try to see the comparisons. Very different types of department over there.
Yeah, I think we're opening a can of worms by creating an executive assistant / business manager role. I think you'll have 3 job descriptions being prepared in short order that say the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, just to give you all a little snippet of what I think I was telling Kevin and Gary, Bill, before you were here. Amy, that's been working with me, Amy and I sat and we actually went through the grading with the fire executive assistant alongside it, with the also executive assistant in the TA's office. We had a few questions of, there was like a couple categories in the grading of physical skills and effort. And I have the old chart of when they were graded years and years ago, and we couldn't figure out why they were given a 3, a 3rd degree in that category. Because the 3rd degree for physical skills and effort is work requires physical strength, stamina, and agility to move around construction sites, playing fields, or over rough terrain, sit, stand, stoop for extended periods of time without interruptions, lift occasionally moderate heavy items over 50 pounds. There was just extensive physical requirement, more so of somebody that goes in the field. And we couldn't figure out why that would have been a 3. And I didn't know if you had any history to that.
I mean, I only had a 2 on that.
We knocked it down to a 1. There were 2 categories. It was physical skills and effort, and it was physical environment. They were both given, I believe, a 3 back in the day. And so when we knocked it down and we went through the whole grading, this new job description came out, I believe, as a high. It was I think 4 points from an 11. So we weren't even close to a 12.
Yeah.
Who's Amy?
Amy Foley works for the Collins Center. She's the consultant that's been working with me on the policies.
So
got it.
The only, I'll bring the matron piece in dealing with prisoner processing and things like that, and that is the only piece that I could see where it could approach a little bit higher than your typical standard office setting. You are dealing potentially with hostile a hostile environment in that
So
regard.
this person is going to be touching and patting down and searching female
Yeah.
detained people.
As a matron, the processing of female prisoners.
So when does that happen? Does that happen when we don't have a female officer on
Yeah.
staff?
No, obviously with the oversight of an officer's.
So I'd be interested in knowing. Yeah.
I mean, I wish the chief was here for that. But just the fact that the individual's a matron, just take all that away, let it to be 1 degree higher to me than a admin assistant position.
I would be asking whether an executive assistant should be serving as a matron.
Yeah.
That seems like not a good idea to me.
Yeah. I'm just I'm trying not to get hung up on the title of this, because when I read the description of what was provided us, the name doesn't equal the job.
That's what I've been harping on for. We've got to go through the hard process of vetting these job descriptions before we grade them. Does the job description make sense? Do we want to create? Are we okay creating an executive assistant / business manager?
Only if it's necessary, but I don't see where it's necessary here. You know, I've been real quiet on this one as you two guys are going back and forth with Michelle. I think half of this is what they're putting in there is just to get it graded higher. Now, I've evaluated matrons in other police departments.
Yeah.
And a matron in another police department, if I had to rank it, doesn't come anywhere near this. The matron's job, I hate to say it is basically a nothing job. All you're doing is observing. You may be feeding the person, you may be patting them down, but, you know, if they're incarcerated, you know, what's your role? Oh, okay, I'm looking at them. That's about the extent of it. There's no big deal with the matron, all right? Even though it's odd because you have to physically touch someone, okay? You're not there alone when you're processing them.
Right.
Right? There is a police officer there. So whose responsibility is it as a prisoner, if we're using that word as a prisoner? You know, all this person does is, you know, do the patting down and putting them in and observing. There's no physical really involved in a matron's job. You know, and when we went into and did the physical skills and effort, what we also incorporated into that was the operation of a motor vehicle. All right. So there's a degree of physical effort there. Right. So I still evaluated it at 308 degrees 308 degree points. So I made absolutely no changes from what the existing evaluation was. You know, maybe I'm, quote, excuse my French, Michelle, I'm a hard ass, but it doesn't require a baccalaureate degree, right? It doesn't really require much more than 3 years experience. I mean, it's not a financial analyst. It does payroll like everybody else in comparable positions who do payroll. So there's no big difference there. The CPR, okay. I got CPR, I got AED, you know, and what's that? That's a little bit of a, 3-hour course? How many times is she going to use the CPR? Who's she going to use the CPR on? As a matron? She's not going to do it for a police officer.
I think it's a requirement to work in the department. It's like all dispatch has to be certified and all those things as well. That just might be the requirement. You know, if someone comes in and is having a cardiac arrest or something, everyone needs to be able to respond. But
yeah,
Michelle, does this job, is there an incumbent in this job already?
Yeah.
Does that incumbent have a bachelor's degree?
I don't think it matters.
It doesn't.
I guess
it was just proof.
Us saying it doesn't need it, and then a department head or saying this is their vision for the position. So I don't know.
Yeah, but is this for the future or is it for the present? The incumbent
you're
is
right.
in there,
Very fair. Yep.
right? I mean, if we say, based on the information that we've had when we evaluated this in the first place, it didn't require a baccalaureate degree. It required the equivalent to 2 years of college, right? And what makes the difference now between what was evaluated at 2 years of college? Oh, it now requires a baccalaureate degree. What's changed? What's the baccalaureate degree in? Is it in liberal arts? Is it in English? Is it in bioscience? It raises too many questions. And that's why when I looked at this, I said, this is a bunch of bull.
By the way, the job description doesn't say bachelor's degree required. It says bachelor's degree preferred. And there's no such thing as, and when we're evaluating a job description, it's what's required, not what's preferred. You don't put in a job description what's preferred. You can put in a job posting that gets put out for filling the job. But in a job description, what is the minimum requirement for entry into the job? And I would say that a bachelor's degree is an overstatement of what would be required for this job, or for an executive assistant job. Now, if we want to make this a business manager job, that's a different matter, and it would become an exempt professional position.
Yeah, this is not an exempt position.
I mean, I would move at least that these positions, the executive assistant positions, are going to grade out at an 11. This new position description, even the discussion we're having, still is a much more in-depth position than existed prior. I know there's a lot of stuff in here, but are we looking at executive assistant positions being standardized at the 11 because we have one at the 11?
We do.
We don't have one in 11.
Well, that's
we got a business manager in public works. Totally different.
That's at a 12, though.
No, that's an 11. Business administrator, public works, 11.
Oh, you guys can hear me. I'm muted. The business administrator in public works and the executive assistant to the TA's office are an 11.
Okay.
Both public safety executive assistants are a 10.
Okay. Maybe that should be the more serious discussion that we're having then. Are the responsibilities, it seems to me the responsibilities of this position are equivalent to the executive assistant at town hall. In varied ways, not the same ways, but in very much the same ways. Does all the executive sessions, does all the, we can add a lot of the other stuff, but Bill, you seem to think that it's left that it hasn't changed since it was graded at the 10, though.
Yeah, I don't think it's changed at all. Right? I mean, if we're going to say, what's the difference between a criminal record, a financial record, a health record, right? They're all confidential.
Exactly.
One's not more confidential than the other.
Exactly.
That's why when we looked at it, it wasn't the confidential piece. It was the judgment piece. And when I asked him, does she have full discretion over redacting those records? He said yes.
Yeah.
I doubt that. I'm going to have, quotes, a clerk redact some of my records. I don't think so. I'll take them right into court on that.
I don't think these little points, this is where we're going to get every department head adding up all these little points that occur and representing them as meaningful in the overall context of the job. And every department head could do the same thing if we open the door to it. And I don't know how, now that it's been mentioned, I don't know how you get, when you've got a business administrator in Public Works and the town administrative assistant at grade 11, how you add a current grade 10 with some business stuff and get greater than a grade 11. I don't know how you do that when there's a business administrator and the highest, in my opinion, the most sophisticated executive assistant in the town. I would argue, and I would be amazed if the town administrator didn't similarly argue that role is the most complex administrative assistant position in this town. It has
that's a fair argument.
Widest breadth, the greatest exposure to others outside of the town, the greatest confidentiality.
I don't know. I ask a question. Where did the 12 come from, Gary? Did the chief say that?
I'm just the grade. You put it on the
Somebody
Word
put it
document.
on the job description.
So I was thinking that, that's why I actually went and wanted to investigate it because I was like,
what he was. I think that's what he was thinking. I mean, from my standpoint, just where I stand, I never saw it as a 12. I mean, if you look at the other positions in grade 12 that are current, you get assistant assessor, assistant town accountant, conservation agent. They're more specialized.
Yeah.
I can't see it being a 12.
Okay, then we're asking the wrong
might
question.
be able, yeah, I was going to say, I might be able to get to an 11, but I can't see a 12.
Yeah. I mean, I'm graded out at 321, grade 11. Was my grading. I was just saying, when I saw the 12 in there, that's why I said, wow, that's a 2-grade jump. Let's figure out. So I was trying to find the thought process behind that responsibilities that made it different than the executive town administrator position. And the real big differences lied in degree, the 5-year experience. Confidentiality was about the same. A little bit more physical side to me, but Bill, you kind of mentioned why that may not be. It may not be so.
Well, we gave it a third degree originally.
Yeah, that's physical. True. That's true. So I have it. I mean, I guess the question is: if we do this, are we looking at these executive assistant positions? Which I can't imagine there ever being more than 3 in the town. These are the 3 major departments in the town. Well, 4. With DPW, that they each have an executive assistant. They'd be grade 11s, but
yeah, I don't want to go on the basis that just because one department has a grade 11 and another one has a grade 10, that the 10 has to be an 11. No, that's where job evaluation, when you look at it, as Kevin said, you look at the minimum requirements necessary to perform the functions of the particular job, right? And if we say, okay, the physical that's a good one because we can say the matron has the physical. Is the matron going to do restraining?
Right.
And how often do we have people incarcerated that are female in the jail? Do you have 1 a year? Do you have 0 per year? Right? I looked at it and said, okay, even though there's a lot of this added wordage and the way the wordage is coming through, I'd question half of it, right? If I was doing the job evaluation, sitting down with the supervisor, first question I would ask, why? Right? Why is it necessary to have, quotes, this level of responsibility in the particular job? Okay. It does have that responsibility. Fine. How does that evaluate to the evaluation process in itself? Right? And I'm going to say, okay, minimum requirements. Kevin loves optimum, and I agree. You don't do it on the optimum. You don't do it on the desire. You don't do it on the perceived in the future.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what we're getting wrapped up here. It's not what is today. It's what they look for in the future. And then my response to that would be, in the future, we'll look at it. But we're not going to make a proposal here that that's what it could be sometime down the road. So,
I used to work at a large company that employed all sorts of different types of engineers. Civil engineers, structural engineers, mechanical engineers, nuclear engineers, etc. We did not make discernments between the grade of different engineers, although the labor market paid some of them very differently. At any one point in time, civil engineers could be in high demand, nuclear engineers could be in high demand. We, for internal purposes and internal equity, graded an engineer as an engineer.
yeah, you may have different levels of engineers.
We had a whole job family: junior, associate,
there you
engineer,
go.
a senior engineer, and guru engineer.
Yep.
Absolutely. We had to your point, Bill, we had a laddering system for engineers, but they were the ladder applied to all areas. So my point is, I think what is in the best interest of the town here? I don't think having 5-page job descriptions for executive assistants in every different department with different potential grades and stuff based on minutia and one seldom occurring things is in the best interest of the town. And the fiscal and the ratcheting that will come from that and the financial implications of that ratcheting. Okay. So I would recommend we suspend. Now, I don't know what's going on with the comp study. We could either defer this decision and inject it or drop it into the comp study for consideration, or we could grade the job now, and I would be grading it. I didn't grade the job. I'm going to be honest with you, because I thought I had so many questions that I didn't think I was in a position. I didn't know how to grade it. So I would be, if we want to grade it now, I'll do that, but I'm not going to give it bachelor's degree points. I'm not going to give it third degree physical requirements. I would be interested in looking at our timesheets and looking how many times in the past year has this person worked evenings and weekends, as stated in this job description.
Yeah.
The current incumbent. Does this, so how many of these things are exceptional in nature, and how many of them are in this 2 standard deviations from the mean, i.e. normal? We evaluate normal, not the extraordinary.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree, but there might be 1 or 2 cases where there is that one extraordinary, right? But when that occurs, you look at it.
Yes, if a certification was required to do that extraordinary thing, yes, that you would consider that certification. Why this person needs to be 911 certified is beyond me.
Because it's not a dispatcher. Well, that raises the question: does this position have to be the backup dispatcher? I don't know.
Yeah, I think historically the position is filled by prior dispatchers, and they like the position because of its schedule, being a scheduler, being all the things responsible for dispatch. I think that's why they.
But it's when you, Gary, I hate to interrupt you on that, but it's not responsible for dispatch. This person. They're not a dispatcher by trade, right? They may be a backup, and backup doesn't necessarily have the same, meet the same criteria as a dispatcher, right? So just because it's a backup dispatcher doesn't mean it has the same degree as a dispatcher. I mean, here, hey, we need another wagon. We need another pumper or whatever it happens to be, but I want that pumper to go down the end of the street.
Yeah.
You know,
But Bill, once again, if the department head is saying, when I hire this position, they will be 911 certified, who are we to say they won't be?
That's our job. That's our job.
Yeah.
Manager, I've seen it for a million years. Executives getting enamored of their executive assistants and trying to get them more money.
Yeah.
The first clue to me was a 5-page job description. You know, it says here, processes all accounts payable and accounts receivable for the department. I would think that would happen in finance. I would think this person would submit that stuff to finance, and finance does accounts receivable. I would be amazed if accounts receivable stuff is happening in the police department. This strikes me as a classic case of grade shopping. And I've seen it a million times. Executives getting enamored of their executive assistants. My executive assistant is the best executive assistant that ever walked the face of the earth. And she deserves more than the executive assistant for the town administrator. It's going to result in perceptions and inequity. It's going to result in additional requests for job grading. They will make a copy of this and replicate it in other departments.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what we're talking about now. We're not. I don't think any of us are talking about the grade 12.
I haven't talked about grade anywhere along the line.
No,
I'm
saying that's the request because it was written on this. We take that. We
guys,
take that
I
off.
got
This.
frozen out.
Right.
Sorry.
You were breaking up there for a minute, Bill, but you're back.
Yeah, I'm back. I think I need a new computer. Town going to pay for it?
I bit the bullet. Black Friday's coming, Bill. You can get a laptop for $200.
Oh,
Uh-oh. I'm in trouble.
I just bought a cheap laptop for $200, a Chromebook.
Oh,
Watch.
okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right,
I don't think to your point, Gary, I don't think any of us were talking about a 12.
I mean, I was trying to find a path to get there, but just the discussion with everybody today, the issues that it would bring across the board, different departments and other things like that. It just, the equity piece of it doesn't make any sense. The 11 makes sense because that's what I graded at, so I'm a little more comfortable there anyway. I don't know what a 321 is on the 11 scale. I don't know where 11 even starts, but
320. 11 starts at 320.
All right, so I'm at 321. So that's without knowing what the other grade, what it was graded at before, as far as numbers. But
you gave credit for a bachelor's degree, and it's not required.
I did.
Right?
I brought it down because I was curious. What happens if I tinker that down a degree to a 3 years up to and including 5 years of related experience? I think that's more what you would want in this position. This isn't someone that's going to come right out of college and do this job for certain.
Agreed.
So
agreed. Yep.
I think that makes
sense.
So,
Michelle, what is your preference? Are we going to grade this job here today? So, Gary, I believe that HR's job is to vet job descriptions and make sure that they are an accurate representation of what it should be. And if somebody writes a job description, it doesn't make sense or could be damaging to the town in terms of morale, in terms of internal equity, we would talk about that and try to have conversations about this isn't good for the town. This is not good for employee morale. Think outside the function and think about cross-functionally, does this make sense for us, or is this going to open up a can of something?
Yeah.
In my opinion,
you're bringing up all really good points. We've had these discussions. So myself, Jim, the chiefs, we've had all these discussions, and you're absolutely right that.
So we've talked to the town administrator.
Yeah, he's been involved in the conversation.
So the town administrator, we've talked about putting this job on the same or a higher grade as the town administrator, executive assistant, and the town administrator is okay with that?
yes for now, and he said his should also be looked at.
Oh, of
So
course,
to-
my point,
to your
ratchet. Use exactly. It
And I already
serves
know that would happen with fire as well. So
exactly.
I mean, just from hearing from all of you, like, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to sit with the chief and go through the job description word by word like I have been with department heads
And that's really what should happen.
recently. And it
Exactly.
needs to happen. And I think we need to do that before rushing anything. I don't want to waste anyone's time grading something that's not even going to be the final version potentially. So I think I need to do that with him. And I'm just debating, and I kind of want everyone's opinion on waiting for the comp study. So
Okay,
the comp
what are the-
study, and we can talk about that a little bit. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah. One of the things that's missing in our process of job evaluation is, and I'm going to look at it from my background and Kevin's and Gary's. When you look at a description that has been prepared by a supervisor manager, we're basically taking verbatim what they say as being the truth or what is required. Most job evaluators, when they go out and, the fire chief or the police chief says, this is what I've got. If you go out and question them in such a way that, you put them slightly on the defensive by trying to support what they're saying. And if you kind of agree, yeah, that is part of the job, that is a requirement, then it becomes basically fact. We don't do that, right? I mean, we'll have somebody go out, but we don't have someone who's really a job evaluator to go out and look at it.
Right. Bill, I think you bring up a good point. Anywhere that I've worked, mostly in the federal sector, yes, the manager creates the first draft of what they envision the position being or what the position is. Then they sit down with HR, and HR irons out everything that we're talking right here, and they literally redline it. And it's usually not a great job for HR to do because you're hacking up what a department head wants.
Exactly.
But and then what we'd be looking at is a streamlined version of what these the position descriptions, job descriptions should look like. And this is an unedited version of a job description and it is probably exactly what that job does. It is.
Yeah.
But chief, and I'll say all our chiefs and our town administrator and every department head in here, if you're not working in HR, if you're not the HR director, are not professionals on understanding how to write job descriptions. And
Exactly.
It's just,
No,
it's
and
a
if you look at
skill.
the last two, it's finding the time to do that. I mean, if you look at the last couple that you reviewed, you made comments on the EHS program coordinator and the Park and Rec program supervisor, and the comments you all made were, these are great job descriptions.
Yeah.
I got an hour and a half to an hour with each of those. So each took an hour to an hour and a half to go through with the department head, word for word, and write them apart.
Yeah.
You see the difference in not doing that because I didn't get to do that with this one.
Well, it does take up your time, Michelle. I know.
It's finding the time to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
it just backs up the need for an assistant director, but
Right. But we shouldn't be right. Here's what I would recommend.
I just don't want to waste your time on evaluating a description.
Here's what I would recommend. I would ask the town administrator if he or she believes that the executive assistant and town administrator is unique or the same as other executive assistants. I don't want to, and either we can create one universal executive assistant job description that is applicable to all department heads, or if the town administrator believes, as I do, that the executive assistant and the town administrator is a unique position in its scope and breadth and confidentiality and et cetera, its contacts with the public, I would recommend an executive assistant - town administrator and then a second executive assistant - department head.
It's
that
the
would be-
latter.
that would be universal to wherever we felt a department had warranted an executive. In fact, we would have a definition that the following departments are executive assistant eligible, so that we don't have proliferation of executive assistants all over here, there, and everywhere. But that's what I would do. And it would get away from grading specific executive assistant jobs in this department one way, in this department another way, in this department another way, and creating hybrid job descriptions and putting stuff in. Now, somebody could say,
it's
somebody
not
could
just
say to me,
executive assistants. We had the same problem with admin assistant. Remember?
Yep.
exactly. That's what I said in my, I don't know if I sent it or not, but I believe that there ought to be a laddering: town administrator of executive assistant, department head executive assistant, and then whatever is below that, generic. An administrative assistant, generic.
Office coordinator.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you raised a point before, Kevin, and we never really followed through on it. This is a good example. Executive assistant, we come up with the essential jobs of any executive assistant.
Exactly.
And then, in fire, an extra little paragraph or an extra bit of lines, they are also responsible for this.
Exactly.
Park and Rec, also responsible for this.
And you have certain certifications maybe that come with that department.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's a salary range, by the way, that, there's all sorts of different, this job has this job has this, and we got it. We understand. But a lot of that stuff is in the tail of the bell curve. It's the 80% of the job would be, you would write a generic description about similar things that executive assistants do in functional areas. They interact with finance, they interact with HR, and they interact with payroll, they interact with blah, and they all do those kind of things. As opposed to excruciating minutia about what a job does, maybe sometimes once a year.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, just a little background on this. When this administrative assistant police was originally done, it was under the old system, it was a grade 7. It came out 298 points. It was looked at again at a later date and came out to, we made a couple changes in it, and it came out to 308 points.
Okay. So 321's not that
They
far
looked
off.
at it again, and it came out to 313 or 318. So it still came out into
grade
a
10.
grade 8 under the old system, but under the new system, both of them would fall into a grade 10. So that's where it was. Because I got it right in front of me.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is we either try to take a look-see at it again, or under the process of evaluation, Gary, you came out with 321. I came out with 308. And that would still make it a grade 10 if we averaged.
Michelle, have you graded the job?
Yeah, Amy and I went through it. I'm trying to pull up the points that we had. We lowered the physical skills and effort and the other, the environment category, though, to from what it was at a 3, we lowered it to like a 1. If we put it back where it is, I think it kicked it right over 11. But let me,
Over an 11?
like slightly, like I mean, like
2
a
and
couple
11 is what
points.
you're saying.
You
2
mean
and
2
11.
and 11?
Correct. It went from a high 10 to an 11.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Let me just pull it up.
Well, if we looked at internal equity and we view that the executive assistant to the town administrator is an 11, and this position, either here in police and or in fire, does not meet that same criteria, then it's a 10. We don't even have to go through the evaluation process, but I would.
I would want to know if leadership of the town concurs with differential grades, or whether we're going to have an issue on our hands if we increase the grade of this job. And that's not, then that is going to be future state, not something that somebody can leverage to get another increase.
Well, you instantly have to look at the fire. You would. That's
exactly.
And are we standardizing the executive assistant positions across town? That's what we'd be up against. That's what we should have done in the past, but
right. And this is an opportunity to do that and include leadership who should be not behaving in a functional manner, but who should be thinking about this in a townwide manner and having a dialogue and having consensus about what we're going to do. And then we go grade that. Yeah. Yep. We agree that the town executive assistant could be the same grade as the police, and that the fire could be a grade lower than both of them. Okay, good. Let's go evaluate that.
Yeah.
I like
evaluate them on the basis of what they do, not what they're going to do.
I think so. Standardization of a lot of these common jobs, whether it's 2 or 3, even if it's 3 positions, so we need to standardize it. The other thing is, I believe that our rating system works. I really like it. The issue we're up against is where we're trying to grade these new positions with the same system. So is there ever an opportunity for someone to grade out at a grade 26?
Yeah,
your highest job should be the highest grade. There should be no grades above the town administrator. Right. That is the penalty. Yeah.
There's a whole lot of gray area in there of where this doesn't match up with the scale. So we have a lot of holes in it, when you start getting into a lot of these grades. So I think we're going to go through a little bit of growing pain here on, where this fits. But I think the low hanging fruit is the equity piece of similar positions and a standardization. I think, Kevin, you talk about a template almost, but it really is. And then you have special certifications for each department. But
exactly. And that contributes to good morale. In my opinion, it lessens the prospective perceptions of internal inequity, and it contributes to the perception of internal equity in my mind.
Well, internal, what do you want to call it? Poaching as well.
Right.
I'm going to go, all of a sudden why do I want to be the fire executive assistant when I can make more as the police executive assistant, right? But I don't know. I don't want to throw away, chief's business manager for public safety. I don't just want to throw that out, Michelle. So I think that should be dug into a little bit more. Are we off base by still calling it an executive assistant? If this is truly something else, then maybe that discussion has to take place. But it's always been an executive assistant to some degree, or Bill mentioned it wasn't even called that at one time. But
it was an administrative assistant.
Yeah,
back when.
So the department's grown, certainly, and I think the departments now, I think if we standardize, I think we're going to be in a much better place. And I'm hoping that's what we can get out of this study, which I think you were just about to talk about, Michelle.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my recommendation is one of two. We either let it sit and I don't want to say forget about it until the new process comes in, or we do an evaluation, and I'm inclined to say there's no significant changes from what it was to what they perceive it in the future, but we don't evaluate it based on that. We based on what it is today, right? You got two options.
I just did the assignment. I graded it.
I graded it.
And I lowered a few of the ones after discussion today, but it still came into the low 11. But
So the job description isn't perfected,
No.
hasn't been perfected, and there's significant questions about the content of the job, especially vis-a-vis other similar situated jobs. I don't feel like the job is ready to be evaluated, but
Okay.
I've got the evaluate. I didn't do it yet, but I'd be glad to blow through it now if you want. I don't think the job is ready to be evaluated.
Okay.
But but we have to remember, we are an advisory committee.
Right.
We do not have, we do not have say. We are
No, you're
advisory
right.
in nature.
We're going to advise you, Michelle, and you could say, well, I want to go with X. I mean,
Yes, that's right.
I mean, at the
How
end
long
of the day, if I'm going to put anything forward, I have to go through it with him. I have to, word for word. There's a lot of wording in there that I just don't think is necessary. We didn't even touch on that. But I, all of your advice is good advice. I don't
You mean
want to just throw that.
suggestions?
Yeah, it's not like you're totally in left field talking about something that doesn't exist. So it needs to be done with him more in depth, and then I circulate and maybe look at it. If at that point the comm study is going, well, then the comm study is going, and we can make a suggestion either to wait or to evaluate it separately.
I mean, our standardization of positions, our grid, how we grade, the call incentive stuff, our comp study, that's all happening outside of this. What never, ever will change is how to write a job description correctly. And that's where I think that can be fixed immediately.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're all, I mean, I think it's a great idea to standardize instead of having separate job descriptions, like you explained, Kevin, for all the different departments, standardizing a generic description and then going from there. And I think that's a great part of the scope of work for the comp study. Take these office coordinators and make a generic description, and then include a paragraph if they're working with conservation. Include a paragraph if they're working with health. Take these executive assistants, do the same thing.
Or just have a statement that says, depending on functional area, performs other duties as assigned. And you
Yeah,
can have,
That's
if you want, you can have an
perfect.
addendum or something, but depending on functional area, performs other duties as assigned. And, you know, if we put our town head on, I would think that any department head would agree with the logic behind that uniformity in terms of the morale and the advancement of morale and internal equity perceptions, and
Yeah, I agree, but with one caveat on that, Kevin. I'd like the standardization wherever possible, but there may be certain circumstances where that additional paragraph is significant in itself.
Yep.
To raise the overall position that one individual function does that would raise it. So, we used to do it in the old days. You'd had a clerk, A, B, and C. You'd have a librarian, A, B, and C. You'd have a nurse, and then you'd have the LPN. Then you'd have the practical nurse. Then you have the physician's assistant. So you broke it down, but there were little distinct differences that were significant enough to change it from one grade to another grade, or to engineer A, B, and C is another one. Okay.
Yeah.
Engineer A or B or C, depending if you go from low to high or high to low, is an entry-level engineer with only certain levels of responsibility. You may have another one that says, okay, I have all of that, plus these additional duties and responsibilities of a significant nature that gives it more responsibility. So that, are we going to go that route? Right? Are we going to have, a clerical assistant, A, B, and C? We're going to go secretary A, B, and C, executive assistant A, B, and C. it cuts down on the number of functions and jobs, not functions, but numbers of jobs, but you cover all the functions that are involved. And I don't know what this new comp study is going to look like. Of course, we weren't really privy to what the criteria was when it went out for the RFE. So my suggestion is we not shelve it, but, put it on hold until we get a better clarification.
So just so you know, Bill, that the RFP hasn't been done yet. So we are like in the infancy stages of gathering, a quote of what our scope of work would even look like.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything.
How long has this been out there? The chief's position?
Well,
The request, I guess.
he's wanted to work on it since I've been here, which is it's a little over 3 years. But the actual request of when he sent in the revised, it's been,
He probably changed it when King left.
that I don't know. I'm sure.
Michelle, you're going to have to make a decision here about, do you want us to grade it or do we want to defer? But I would argue that if the
If we
recommendation
grade it,
is
it's probably not going to change. So,
but we don't even have a good, in my opinion, the job description before we can grade it needs to be further vetted to capture the two standard deviations from the mean and the bell curve and not the entire bell curve.
yeah.
And to be very careful about, and I know this, I used to do this, I used to write job descriptions, and it was, people didn't like when I went to their office and said, no, wait a minute. Does this job's doing accounts payable and accounts receivable? Or is it sending stuff to accounts payable and accounts receivable? And get very,
But that's what you have to do. I mean, it's
Classifiers
everybody
don't make friends.
No,
That's
and
right.
if someone says we have that issue now, somebody says I process payroll. Well, what is your actual definition of processing?
actually, you're sending stuff to payroll to be processed. You're
Right.
reviewing time submissions.
Right.
That managers should be doing. By the way, the other thing is I wanted to mention in the non-government, there are no more administrative assistants and executive assistants are going by the wayside. You know how many admins my company has?
How many
One for
employees do you have?
600.
Oh wow.
Now they're all but admins and executive assistants, managers do that. I used to have managers do what used to be done by executive assistants. No executive assistants are sitting typing letters anymore. I'm typing my own letter. I haven't had an.
Is that a good thing you think or a bad thing?
It's a wonderful thing. It's efficiency. It's continuous improvement. It's a sign of the times. We don't need executive assistants sitting around. Now, this is a gross exaggeration, but I will tell you that the premise of a secretary is fast fading.
And in Chief's defense, I think this written as a business manager, maybe with some of that mindset, probably didn't know it at the time, but getting maybe involved in a little bit of grant writing and things like that, trying to be really, the position is changing.
Yeah, but you just raised a good point. Grant writing.
Yeah.
Is this person doing all the research that's necessary for that grant? Who signs off on it before it's sent out?
Yeah.
The executive assistant or the manager? Right? Just because you do the grunt work to do it, whose responsibility is it for the final version to go? Right? I mean, that's why you had, quotes, a lot of these executive assistants. They would do all the grunt work to get something done, a project, whatever, and who signs off on it? Who has the ultimate responsibility? Right? So my suggestion, ladies and gentlemen, put this one on hold and leave it where it's at.
Gary?
I hate leaving things out, especially since it's been here. You just said 3 years. He's trying to get something done on
Yeah,
this.
but he didn't actually give me anything until
Okay.
this September.
I guess if we, with or without, the Collins Center or whoever we're having doing our comp study stuff, having this job description revised, and once it's revised, us having another meeting to do it, it would make more sense to me. That's all. Because
That's all. That's alternative. Yeah. I guess I would talk to the police chief and say there's two ways of going here. We can vet this job description and resubmit it once the job description has been vetted and refined. It can be submitted for evaluation, or we can hold off and have dialogue about what's the right thing to do from a town-wide perspective, and include it in the study. But what I would prefer to do is have some dialogue. If the study's too far off into the future, I would prefer to have a discussion amongst leadership of the town to say, what's the right thing to do here? Before we start memorializing things and stepping and stuff, what's the right and what can we all commit to? If the fire chief is going to scream bloody murder or come rushing in with an executive assistant / business manager 2 weeks after we evaluate this job, I think we ought to know that.
Yeah, and then the ripple effect goes further because you got the business manager in Public Works.
Exactly. And the town manager going to say, and my job needs to be up a level. So I think we ought to have what we're doing here town-wide on this. My preference would be to know what is the consensus approach in this space before we go evaluating things on a one-off basis. And I believe this area is ripe for, what was the word? A uniform approach.
Okay.
Yep. Well, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. What are the political ramifications?
It's because it's not even political. It's losing. Listen, I'm neutral, right? That's my job. Stay neutral, stay non-judgmental, non-biased. You don't want to lose a good person that's in the position, which we have here. So that is a factor. You also don't want to increase a role just because you're trying to get it to fit the person. You want to do it if that's what the position needs, that's what the focus is. So I'm trying to keep everything as neutral as possible and just say, did the position change? How did it change? Reflect that in the job description and keep the person necessarily out of it. But you also don't want to lose a good person because a good employee because they're hard to come by. Especially for that type of role because the payroll is not a quick and easy thing to do and process and work up.
I'm going to say one last thing and then stop. You know what the core purpose of job evaluation is? And I don't mean to be snide the core purpose of job evaluation is internal equity across the organization. It's using a common yardstick to measure every job and contribute to the perception of internal pay equity across the organization.
And so that's what my second piece was going to be, is to your statement earlier, Kevin, about what is the best thing for the town to do? From my perspective, it's wait till the comp study's done. If we need job descriptions that are generic across the board for all three of these, why would we evaluate them one by one? Why? I don't understand. I want to help the chief and I want to keep the person in that role and I want to get there, but from an organization perspective and an HR perspective, waiting until the comp study comes out and maybe we make the implementation, say you had to implement it in 3 phases because we don't have the money. Just say we're way out of whack. We've got all these things we need to implement and change. Maybe that role is part of phase 1. Instead of phase 3, maybe you evaluate it that way, because they've been waiting longer. But I just can't see if we need these generic descriptions for office coordinators, if we need generic descriptions for executive assistants, we're continuing to do it one by one by one by one, and I feel like it's going to create a bigger mess.
We don't need a
For
comp
now.
study to do that, though. We all know, the 4 of us
And
right
who's
here
going to
know.
write them? Who's going to write them? Because it's my job and it's on me to write it. And I just, with everything going on, I don't, I can't do it. I'm not going to commit to something that I know I can't produce.
What's
Yeah,
that? Writing a universal executive
Yeah.
assistant job description?
For several of
Right.
these, for the key,
Right.
you start with the top, which would be the executive assistant ones, but also the we had talked about admin assistant.
Yeah. I can't commit to it. I can't. And I'll list
I don't
a
mean
couple
to
of these
I would
later,
think you
but
could
it's-
I got somebody installed AI on my computer at work.
I know.
and you-
I do-
I'm thinking the same
I
thing.
do use it. I do
And-
use it, but
and-
you still have to go through it. You
You
still
do.
have to do it.
Oh, no question about it. But there's even without AI, you could Google executive assistant job description. You could probably get samples that you could work with, or yeah. So
But who's Googling it? Who's vetting it? Who's spending that time? I'll
I'll-
name a couple
I'll
of
do
things
it.
later.
I'll do it.
But I mean, if someone wants to help, I'm all for it. I am all for it. If I can get the help for somebody to assist with that, maybe I can even have Amy help. She can't actually do the work for us, but she can help, coach and mentor and kind of facilitate and put it together. But if somebody can, I'm all for getting it done.
I'd be glad to take a hand at creating a generic executive assistant job description for
So to
consideration.
do that, would you need to talk to both chiefs and the town administrator? And
Just the 3
no.
that currently exist. If you get the 3 job descriptions, that'll give him an
Those
idea
3?
of.
Okay, I'll give you the current. That would help immensely. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
It's tough because
As
No,
far as
name
the
a couple
in-depth
things.
stuff, getting into the other ones, I think we need to have a couple meetings, maybe with Jim, really just talking about would a structure of the tiered admin assistants make more sense. The ABC 1, 2, 3, whatever, admin
I like
assistant
that
1, admin
idea.
assistant. And that gives some growth. It does a few things, right?
Yeah.
And it standardizes at the same time. That's probably the next big one that we should really look at. Maybe it's something for a
I really like that idea.
tax write-off person to do. Maybe I'll jump in and talk about that some. I think that's one that I just want to make sure that we're doing it, and we're going to get buy-in from Jim and the select board that's the way we want to go. It makes sense. It's modernizing our system a little bit, and it can be done in lieu of any comp changes. We're just trying to clean up our job descriptions here. I mean, to help for equity.
Yeah, well, I think one of the problems that the town has versus, shall we say, a large company is that majority of the positions that are here are rather unique in themselves, where you have someone in the library, right? Do you need all those librarians? Probably not. You could standardize that, librarian A, B, and C, and you don't need junior librarian. You don't need senior librarian technical services. Then you'll have another senior librarian circulation. Good deal of standardization can be done there. But when you have shall we say, an inspector of wires, you only have one,
Yeah.
right? You may have another one, your public health nurse, you only have one. So, we're rather unique in the sense that most of our positions are one-on-one, or just one incumbent, one position.
This job might not be as big as we think, Bill. Really, it's the admin assistant piece, the executive assistant. It's all the administrative, it seems like. I'm trying to think of.
You don't have that many, though. That's just the point.
Yeah.
How many business administrators do you have?
Yeah, we won't.
One.
Yep.
How many highway superintendents do you have? One.
Right.
Right. But then when you get down into, DPW, you have a lot of individuals in one particular position. Same in the light company. A lot of them into the same level. But in town hall, I don't know how you're going to do it because of the uniqueness of individual functions. You can do some. So, Michelle, on this new comp study, where do we stand on that? Just to change direction.
So I'm currently compiling a list of all of the positions that we want reviewed to get a kind of a rough total number. We're looking at all of Schedule A and Schedule B. Just because that also includes the veterans agent that we had looked at before, but it's Schedule A, Schedule B. So I'm listing all their positions, the current incumbent. We put their name on it. We also put their minimum and maximum salary, their current salary. It's a whole spreadsheet that goes to the Collins Center, and then they give us back a scope of work. So that's the point I'm at right now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, the big question, though, is another one that we throw in. If they're going to have an evaluation process, is it going to be just based on market pricing, or is it going to be based on some tool of evaluation?
Banning is usually they have a tool of their own, so it would replace the one we have. But that's stuff that needs to be discussed.
Right. Well, the big question is, do we want to go to a new tool, or do we want to keep our existing tool? Because if we're comfortable with our existing tool, we can tell who's ever going to do the process of, this new comp study. This is the tool that we have. This is the tool that we want.
Yeah, I think this tool works fine. It's just it needs to be tuned.
Yep.
Sure, if the spreads need to be tuned or whatever, so be it.
Yeah,
that's not.
Yeah, I would not want the new comp study to have a new tool like the Hay system.
Oh,
right. That ain't going to work. So this is more headache for you, Michelle.
No, and I don't mean to sound whiny. I want to do everything. I have to be realistic that I can't.
Well, if they want to, if they're, I don't know,
I know every vendor has their own tool.
Yeah, they do.
We currently use HRS, so I don't know if if we chose the Collins Center and they did the study, I don't know if they would use the tool we currently have. I don't know what their policies are. But it's a question for them. I can ask that.
Well, the thing that we didn't do in the past when we went out for the comp studies, we never asked them what their tool was beforehand. They always gave it to us after the fact.
Yeah.
So I think it's incumbent upon us to request them that if you're going to do a tool, what type of tool, so at least we have a heads up. And what happens if they come in and say, well, we're only going to do market pricing, right? Market pricing doesn't really work in a government situation
I used
because we
to
don't
teach
have a bunch of engineers.
I used to teach a course in compensation back in the day, and I used to talk about the criticality of internal equity and the need for an internal job evaluation system. Guess what? My company doesn't have an internal job evaluation system. We rely exclusively on market pricing.
Okay.
I would have said 15 years ago, I would have said that's heresy.
Right.
But today, my company does not have an internal job evaluation system. It relies on market data to price jobs.
Do you think you could do that in the public sector though?
No,
Because
heck no.
Yeah.
Heck no. Heck no.
yeah,
No.
I mean, people
No,
are just
no.
economically paying for new candidates and
No way. There's
Yeah.
no way you could move to that in the current environment.
Yeah, you could not do that in a healthcare facility. You could not do it in an education facility, and you really can't do it in a governmental. Public sector, and manufacturing, stuff on that, you probably could.
It's unfortunate. You wish you could, but
Yeah, no, it's yeah. There's
All right,
drawbacks
well,
to it.
yeah. I mean, there is to every system, right? There's pros and
Yep.
cons. So
All right, so Michelle, all right, you don't have to. I was going to ask you where.
yeah, that's
So
marching orders. I think I'm going to go back to the chief. I'm going to work on the job description, and then I'll reevaluate kind of where we're going at that point. And then I can touch base with you all again. We talked about the comp study. I do want to shift gears a little bit and just mention a couple other things that Amy and I have been working on. So I've probably mentioned these before, but just to recap, Amy and I have been talking about personnel advisory committee membership. One of the reasons is it was questioned if the HR director position should be a voting member of the committee. For the definitions and everything that was pulled together, the legal response is that it could be argued I'm a citizen of the United States because it says a citizen or a resident. So obviously I'm not a resident, but I'm a citizen of the United States, and legally they could argue that point. My take on it is it makes it my job more difficult being a voting member for many reasons, more than one, and I would have to recuse myself, which I haven't been doing, from a lot of matters. And so rather than worry about that every single meeting, what I have to recuse myself from, what I don't, my recommendation is to be an ex officio member, where I'm still a member of the committee, but I'm not voting. So we would go get another member from being a resident that could actually be a voting member.
I couldn't have said it better myself. The problem that it causes for you and your legitimacy and the conflict that it will cause you as a voting member with people in your role, I think it's ill-advised for you to be a member of this committee, a voting member, in terms of you executing your duties seamlessly and in a manner that's acceptable to people that you work with. And I just think it's a conflict. You serve a different role. You bring work to this committee, and the committee serves a different role of reviewing and advising. And so I was surprised about you joining this, not because of you, anything about you, about the conflict and that it would create for you in your role with the people you serve in the town.
Yeah. Well, a little
100%
background on that. The old committee, Gary, what did we have? 7 members, something like that. Then the select board, in their infinite wisdom, said, "Oh no, we're getting rid of it, but there's only going to be 3." And the 3 created other problems because, Kevin, if I'm talking to you, even out on the street, can't do that because that becomes a majority of whatever. So we expanded it, and the easiest way to expand it was to add members. And the quickest way we could do it so that it was more than 3 was Anita was on the board before, so, she
Yeah.
was asked would you like it again? And we needed at least one more, right? And it was, I guess, really quick thinking. Oh, Michelle, why not Michelle? Well, Michelle started out of ex officio, then she got dumped into it. I'm in a perfect agreement that her role should revert back to what it was, and that the board be extended numbers wise, probably back to 7.
Back to 5, or
Which-
even 5.
At least
So-
5.
Which therein lies another issue with this. My piece is fine. I think we all agree on that. It should be an ex officio member. The actual membership and how many you have, I want to look back at my notes, but we've met with Labor Council, and I don't believe the select board had the authority to change that because it's in the personnel bylaw of how many members you can have at 3. And it looks like the select board voted twice to make it 5. I don't know why they voted twice. I forget, but it's now 5. Being in the personnel bylaw, only town meeting can change that, not the select board. So
For
Well,
an
the
advisory board?
The original was 7.
No, we're
Yeah,
talking
that
two
was for
different.
the
We're talking personnel
about-
board, which has an authority statute
you took
authority
that to
behind
town
it.
meeting. So there was a personnel board of 7. You
Yeah.
took that to town meeting. That got dissolved. They created the personnel advisory committee. When they did that, they put a lot of language in the personnel bylaw, which is basically your end all be all document that you cannot alter outside of town meeting. Town meeting is the only entity that can alter that
Right.
document. And so in that, it states the membership and what that can be. And I believe it says 3. So we've
Or
been
the
kind of,
for the personnel advisory committee.
Interesting.
Correct.
I don't recall this going to town meeting. I recall the select board creating the committee to support HR, knowing that we
it
had a
went to
vacuum.
town meeting because, and
It
it
did.
might have been buried there, because at that point I wasn't here. So it might have been buried when they created the employee handbook.
Yeah.
That's when they ripped apart the personnel bylaw. And so you had the personnel advisory committee with
Yeah.
the bylaw, you had the handbook. So it's all buried. On
Interesting.
top of all this, so this is what
We-
Amy and I
We
are
have no
working through,
authority.
but- No. So this is all what Amy and I have been working
Mhm.
through and getting back on track, and why I've been having such an issue enforcing things in this department, because we don't even know what policies and procedures to work with. So there's a 2022 select board regulation and policy document that lives on our website. That was in 2022. The handbook was in 2021. Handbook states, I supersede everything. So no matter what you approved afterwards, the handbook supersedes everything. In 2022, when your policies, Gary, were issued, it brought back old HR policies from when Anne was here. So for example, it brought back a vehicle use policy from 2012. But the handbook still supersedes it. So I didn't know which policy to use. I'm using the handbook. I'm using Anne's old policy. I'm using both. I'm using this one for basically all of our policies. And that's what Amy kind of uncovered, was all HR policies. The select board document was approved. It pulled back in those old ones, but the handbook is the one I should be going by. That supersedes everything. So it's a mess.
What about the labor agreement?
It's a mess. Which one? What do you mean?
Well, wouldn't the labor agreement override a handbook?
Right, we don't have. They're not unionized though.
You don't have any.
there's so the handbooks for the non-union, we have
Oh.
individual union contracts.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the contracts hold all the
Yep.
union.
I
Yeah.
thought the handbook was overarching. Okay,
No.
gotcha.
No, it
Gotcha.
excludes those, because it states excludes individual contracts or employment agreements or CBAs.
Thank goodness.
So my structure in this entire department is a mess. And that's become a number one priority to get that back on track. We're trying to combine making one whole document for the bylaw and the handbook so things don't get lost when we make changes, revisions. We're trying to dig into history of what's been approved. What have we done so far? There's only been a couple things where we've changed the handbook. What did we have the authority to change during the year without town meeting? Gary, if you look at the ones we just did, the merit increase and the promotion, the merit increase we can put under the bylaw in the section of benefits where the select board has the authority to change them.
Yeah.
The merit, the promotion increase, we technically cannot. So we have to look at revising language so we don't violate changing the bylaw without town meeting approval. So it's quite the mess. We are working through it, but a lot of stuff has happened over the last several years where we need to get the main structure back on track.
Well, we can blame the select board for all this, right?
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No.
Maybe not.
You know
I
what,
have
though? I mean, you know what, Bill, to your point, there was too many hands in it. We didn't have HR staff. Nobody knew what they could touch, what they couldn't. Nobody knew
Right.
what was up or down. It's not any one person's fault. It's that there was no main control of it.
Because you
Michelle,
dissolved the
what-
personnel board. You dissolved
Right.
the personnel board that without a plan, really.
Yeah.
And there was no plan. And so now we're just trying to get that back on track. So now you know why I can't write a job description.
Michelle, if I were your boss, I'd be saying to you, what 3 things could we do in the new year to deal with what you're talking about? What 3 things
So
should
yeah,
we do?
so working with Amy, actually I'll tell all of you, working with Amy, I have a weekly check-in with Jim with Amy. And so we go over all of these things. So he knows what I'm working on, what's needed.
What recommendations, though,
Yes.
as the head HR
Yes.
person, what are you recommending would be in the best interest of the town and the standing of, and
The
clarification
main things right now we've been talking to him about are getting the policies back together at town meeting, removing me from the PAC as a voting member. And I think the other thing is our drug testing compliance. Those are the big 3 right now.
I have a 12:30 meeting that I have to jump to.
That's all I have. Do we want to approve the minutes?
Approval of minutes. I motion we approve the minutes for the last meeting.
Second,
September 25th. All in favor?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
All approved. Next.
Beautiful. Does anyone have anything else to discuss?
Yes. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah. Enjoy your time off. The one thing I would suggest is that maybe we, as a committee, have a little bit more, not input, but of what's going on with this new study.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think we might need to schedule a few more meetings instead of once a month because things might ramp up a little bit with this. And if we don't need the meeting, we can cancel it. But if we have a standing meeting, that would help.
Okay.
Do
Well, yeah.
Wednesdays work for people?
Yeah, as it stands right now, I don't know what my schedule is from one day to another. And I hate to say that because my wife just came out of rehab after 45 days. So I'm a home health aide now. So, yeah, I don't have much time.
So
But-
do you want to schedule them every 2 weeks and then we can see where we land? And
Yeah.
As
Once
far as
we
I'm
start-
concerned, as long as we have updates of what's going on, we can always make them a brief meeting. I can make
Well,
available.
You know what I can do? Does everyone prefer instead of meeting, I can just send an email? If people feel like we need a meeting after reading the email, we can schedule one. We can do that too.
That's okay with me.
Why don't we do that? Why don't I periodically send you updates? Hey, I've sent the list. This person has it, got the scope of work. We need to review it. Let's meet. I can just periodically send you stuff.
That would be great. I'd say that we keep our protocol of having a monthly meeting for the primary purpose of doing job evaluations and job reviews. And that you have the discretion to add additional meetings as other topics occur. And
our next meeting is actually on Christmas. It falls on Christmas. So do we want to push it to the week before December 18th?
Yeah. So, yeah, I believe it's okay.
Okay. I'll leave that at 10:30 on December 18th.
that works.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah. So moved. Everybody
Aye.
agree? Hey, good.
Yep.
Aye.
Good. Thanks so much.
Thank you,
Happy
everyone.
Thanksgiving, doll.
Happy Thanksgiving.